Hello, this is Harry Reasoner. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about zealotry, dogmatism, and the Two Neals. I was just entering my fourth year of university. I was studying biology when I was introduced to a guy named Neil at a party. He was the boyfriend of one of my girlfriend's friends, and he and I hit it off. He was a really nice guy. He was witty, he was generous, he was very nice, he was very smart, and he was the life of the party, which was a really nice thing. You see, he loved going to parties, and he could always be counted on to be the designated driver, because Neo didn't drink. He was a born-again Christian. And yes, I did say that he was a born-again Christian and that he was smart. There might be some cynics out there who think that those two conditions are mutually exclusive. But I would have to disagree. In my life, I've known personally probably maybe 15 to 20 born-again Christians, and a couple of them were a little bit lacking in the brain department, but in general, they were not. I've come to think, I know it's anecdotal, but in my personal experience points to the conclusion that it has a lot less to do with a lack of intelligence than it does with emotional disturbance. What I mean by that is that Neil, at the drop of a hat, and much like every other born again that I've ever met, would love to launch into an account of and a recollection of how he came to be converted. And anyone out there who's known born agains could probably predict what Neil's story was, if not in the details, at least in the general theme. You know, previous childhood indoctrination didn't take root, and it lay latent, and only bore fruit once Neil reached adulthood or early adulthood, and some emotional disturbance or upheaval brought it to the fore. In the case of Neil, and he would happily tell you the story, sometimes laughing, sometimes quite serious with tears rolling down his cheeks, and I witnessed it a number of times, would tell you the story of his father's passing. And I don't mean to belittle that or make fun of that, but Neil had trouble adjusting to that, and he hit the bottle. And he would tell the story of one night in, I think, his second year of university. He was lying under a bar table, looking up, thinking, there's got to be a better way. And he's right. My own extensive research in that area shows that it's far more productive and useful to actually sit at the table. But anyway, through that means, and through that event, Neil found the Lord and started walking the straight path. Now, if you knew Neil and heard him speak, you would recognize that in his former secular life, he had obviously been very profane. But he had to adjust his speech, and he did so by adopting the word frig. It was frig this and frig that, and you've got to be friggin' kidding me, and get the frig out of here, and holy frig. Now, Neil had another friend, and a roommate actually, whose name was Neil as well. I was introduced to that Neil. Now, unlike frig Neil, this second Neil was a friggin' asshole. He was a jerk of the highest order, manipulative and dishonest, but he was also born again. And like frig Neil, he had had to adjust at some point in the past his speech, but he chose to go with the word Fritz. The two of them would come over to my apartment, and we would argue about evolution and creation and religion, etc., and God. And it's I have to relate the fact that I never started any of those arguments. I I left it up to them because I knew it was always coming. I don't mean to be misleading. I knew that those arguments were on the way and that I didn't have to start them, and I was a full participant, and I actually looked forward to them. But oh boy, those guys would get so worked up. Until at times the only words that could come out of their mouths were Frig and Fritz. They would sit there with their Bibles, and they'd drink tea while I drank beer, and I'd sneak off to the washroom to return the beer, or I'd run off to the fridge to get another one, and I'd come back to find gospel music playing softly on my stereo. Many times after they had left, I would find religious pamphlets stuck here and there around my apartment. I remember one time one of them taped one pamphlet to a bottle of beer in my fridge, knowing that, of course, it wouldn't be long before I discovered it. And on more than one occasion, I would be cleaning up afterwards, or maybe the day after, and I would find a Bible full of post-it notes directing me to passages they wished that I would read. What was very odd about all of these arguments and debates was that they rarely varied. Over and over again, they would ask me questions about what I believed, and I would honestly answer them. They would suggest reasons why they felt I was wrong, and I would clearly refute them. I would ask them questions, and they would be unable to answer, at least in any sort of meaningful way. And yet the same conversation would have to be repeated virtually verbatim the next time around. I realize in hindsight that they had very little interest in discussing my views. They wished to replace them with their own. I think that, again, in hindsight, they had very little respect for what I believed. They certainly didn't ever listen to what I ever had to say. But their religion, like all religions, insisted and mandated that they attempt to convert those around them. And of course, their arguments, in the same way as the reasons why they adopted their beliefs in the first place, were all emotional. There was no basis in fact, and there was no basis in reason. It was hard sometimes not to be amused, and it was hard sometimes not to be somewhat sarcastic. I remember Fritz Neal flying off the handle one night, and Frig Neal having to physically restrain him. "Oh, I'm gonna kick his Fritzen bum. Oh, calm the Frig down." And on it went. They were something else. I guess I'm not 100% sure just what my point is tonight, but I'd like to ask a question. How many of you have had your supper interrupted with your family by an evolutionist at the door who wants to show you the latest molecular data? How many of you have gone into the bathroom stall at a local restaurant to find Darwin rules scribbled in magic marker across the stall? How many of you have gone to the library to get a religious book only to find that some evolutionist has come along and ripped out pages, defaced the book, and inserted evolutionist pamphlets? I'd also further like to ask if there's anyone out there who's been invited to frig off or to go fritz yourself. This is Harry Reasoner, and I open up the floor.